Hi, this is the Bible Touchstone, and I'm responding again in my sixth video. In the last video, we talked mostly about John 15:22 and appealed to the context which it was given, and basically I'm making here a case against the age of accountability theology by considering some of the appeals that were made by somebody, a proponent for the age of accountability theology, but examining his scriptural appeals to see if they measure up to a rule of faith by using Scripture to interpret Scripture and reading them in context to see if these things are so and warranted from his appeals. So we're going to talk mostly about John chapter 9:41, and Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin, but now you say, we see, therefore your sin remains." Now, this follows closely to the themes expressed and alluded by in the last video, John chapter 15:22. And just as John chapter 15:22 or any other verse ought not be isolated from its context, so 9:41 also is worthy of the same consideration and hermeneutical discipline. So verse 9:39 gives an express central contextual basis with details that lend to a positive interpretation of verse 41. Says, and Jesus said, "For judgment I am come into this world, that they which see not may see, and they which see may be made blind." So we're going to take a hermeneutical examination here. Those who do not see may see. This of course alludes to Isaiah 43 verses 7 to 12. And those who say we see may be blind. Now Jesus is suggesting a kind of redemptive justice here that would restore order disrupted by the God of this world, who had blinded the world, like it says in 2 Thessalonians. If they were blind, they would have been healed, but because they claim to know, though ignorant, they are condemned. They testify against themselves by the terms of the law they affirm. Again, Jesus is speaking to a specific group of people, audience relevance, and within a unique historical setting. John 9:41 should not be appealed to for the argument that ignorance necessitates God's pardon, because that's a totally different central theme that is not warranted by the text. Now let's consider the conclusion here. When considering the context of John 15:22 within its framework, its immediate context, the central themes employed throughout here in this context, the centrality of the gospel, according to John, and the integral frame of Scripture, the whole writ, the whole Bible, one may confirm that the central theme does not suggest that ignorance of God's law, those that are ignorant, that doesn't excuse them from the terms of that judgment. It doesn't excuse them from the guilt of their sin, because sin is sin. Sin is the transgression of the law. Now, it's those that the doers of the law that are justified, but not the hearers of the law. And since none are justified by the works of the law, we need Christ's saving grace to redeem us from that. So, the text that may be shown here is that the guardians of the law in this particular application were no longer winked at by God and his long suffering at their ignorance of Christ, like we see in Acts 17. Now, if Christ had not come to speak the truth to them, they would not have rejected them. They would not have rejected him, and the law would not have held them accountable for rejecting God's commandment to obey his Christ. So, the text says that they hated Jesus because they hated God the Father. They, just see Psalms 35, had a reason to accept the Christ, but they lacked a reason to hate him. They hated Christ after seeing his works because they were condemned already in disbelief. So this overall central theme here of this passage tells that Jesus is warning to a particular group of persecutors who hated God, and the sinners sinned because Christ testified against them. Now, though they knew God not, they hated seeing him. They were forewarned by the scriptural prophecy because they did not believe, and they were guilty of that sin particularly. Now, the message is not that ignorance is part of the here, that's not the central theme, but rather that unbelief would not be tolerated by God. Now, did Christ come to judge? In John 12:44 to 48, Jesus cried and said, "He believeth on me, believeth not on me, but on him that sent me. And he that seeth me, seeth him that sent me. I am come a light into the world, that whoever believeth on me should not abide in darkness. If any man hear my words and believe not, I judge him not, for I came not to judge the world, but to save the world." But here's right here, this is important. He that rejected me and receiveth not my words hath one that judgeth him. The word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day. And I'm going to make my conclusion here in the last video. Grace be to you.